They tried questioning a human. Big mistake. Part 1: The Capture. The stars were quiet that night. Park sat alone in the cockpit of his small cargo ship, the Morning Star. He was drinking cold coffee and listening to old music from Earth. The song was something his grandmother used to sing when he was a child. It made him feel calm, even out here in the darkness of space. Was 34 years old. He had short black hair, tired eyes, and hands that knew hard work. He used to be a soldier, but those days were behind him now. These days, he just moved cargo from one station to another. Simple work, quiet work. He liked it that way. His ship was small but reliable. It carried medical supplies, food packages, and sometimes personal items for colonists living on the outer rim. Nothing special, nothing dangerous, or so he thought. The alarm came suddenly. Red lights filled the cockpit. A loud warning sound broke the peaceful silence. Sat up straight and looked at his screens. His heart dropped. 3 ships were approaching fast. They were warships. They were a reptilian species. They had scales the color of dark green stone, yellow eyes with thin pupils, and voices that sounded like gravel scraping against metal. They controlled a large part of this sector of space. They were known for many things, but kindness was not one of them. Tried to run. He pushed his engines to maximum power, but the Morning Star was a cargo ship, not a fighter. The ships surrounded him within minutes. A warning message appeared on his screen. Human vessel, stop your engines. Prepare to be boarded. Resistance will result in destruction. Closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about fighting. He thought about running. But he was alone, unarmed, and surrounded. There was no escape. He stopped the engines. The soldiers came aboard like a storm. There were 6 of them, each one taller than by at least a head. They wore black armor and carried weapons that hummed with energy. They did not speak to him. They simply grabbed him, put metal restraints on his wrists, and dragged him off his ship. Did not struggle. He had been a soldier once. He knew when to fight and when to wait. They took him to the largest of the 3 ships. It was called the Silent Truth. Learned this name later, and he thought it was a strange name for a ship. There was nothing silent about what happened on board. The inside of the ship was cold and dark. The walls were made of black metal, and the air smelled like chemicals and fear. Was pushed through long hallways, past doors that led to places he did not want to imagine. Finally, they brought him to a large room. The room was empty except for a single chair in the center. The chair had straps for arms and legs. Above it hung strange machines with needles and lights. Understood immediately. This was an interrogation chamber. They forced him into the chair and locked the straps around his wrists and ankles. Then the soldiers left and was alone. He waited. After what felt like hours, the door opened again. A walked in, but this one was different from the soldiers. He was older, his scales darker and rougher with age. He wore a long gray coat instead of armor, and his yellow eyes held a cold intelligence that made uncomfortable. This was High Inquisitor Vex. He was the commander of this ship and the most feared interrogator in the Empire. It was said that he had never failed to break a prisoner. Every species, every mind, every will, all had crumbled before him eventually. Vex walked slowly around, studying him like a scientist studying a new insect. "Human," Vex said. His voice was deep and rough. "Do you know why you are here?" Said nothing, he just watched. Vex continued walking. "We found something interesting in your cargo, an encrypted data chip, military-grade encryption, very sophisticated." Almost laughed. He knew exactly what chip they were talking about. It contained his grandmother's recipes, hundreds of them. He had encrypted it because those recipes were precious to him, not because they were secret military information. But he said nothing. Explaining would be pointless. They would not believe him. "You are a spy," Vex said. It was not a question. "You work for the Human Coalition military. You were gathering information on our shipping routes." I am a cargo pilot, said quietly. I carry medicine and food. Vex smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. His teeth were sharp and yellow. That is what a spy would say. He stopped walking and stood directly in front of. He leaned down until their faces were close. Could smell his breath. It smelled like rotting meat. I have broken many beings in this room, Vex whispered. Species from 100 worlds. Some lasted hours, some lasted days, a few lasted weeks, but they all broke in the end. They all told me everything. He straightened up and looked down with absolute confidence. Humans are known to be soft creatures, emotional, weak. I expect you will break faster than most. Looked around the room slowly. He saw the machines hanging above him. He saw the tools on the walls. He saw the dried stains on the floor that might have been blood from previous prisoners. Then he looked back at Vex. And he smiled. It was a small smile, calm and quiet, but it was real. Vex's eyes narrowed. In all his years of breaking prisoners, he had seen many reactions: fear, anger, despair, begging, but he had never seen someone smile in this room, not like this. Something amuses you, human? Vex asked. Shrugged as much as the restraints allowed. I was just thinking, he said. You have a nice room here, very scary, good atmosphere, but I have seen worse. He had, in his soldier days, he had seen things that still visited him in nightmares. This room was terrible, yes, but had already walked through his own personal hell and survived. What more could they do to him? Vex stared at him for a long moment. Then he turned and walked toward the door. We will see how long your smile lasts, human. We will begin tomorrow. The door closed behind him with a heavy sound. Was alone again in the dark room. He took a deep breath and let it out slowly. His heart was beating fast, but his mind was clear. They wanted to break him. They thought he was weak. They thought he would crumble like all the others. They were about to learn they had made a very big mistake. They tried questioning a human. Big mistake. Part 2, the first session. The began with darkness. They moved from the interrogation chamber to a small cell deep in the ship. The cell had no windows, no lights, and no sound. The walls were thick enough to block everything. When the door closed, the darkness was complete. Could not see his own hand in front of his face. This was standard procedure. Most species needed light. They needed sound. They needed to know that the world still existed around them. Take those things away and their minds would begin to crack. Fear would grow. Panic would follow. After a few days, prisoners would tell the anything just to escape the emptiness. Sat down on the cold floor and closed his eyes. It made no difference whether they were open or closed. The darkness was the same. He thought about his grandmother. She had lived through hard times too. War, hunger, loss, but she had always smiled. She had always cooked. She had always told him that darkness was just the universe resting its eyes. Sleep well, universe, whispered to himself. He began to do push-ups. 3 days passed, or maybe it was 4, could not be sure. He had no way to measure time, but he kept himself busy. He exercised until his muscles burned. He slept when he was tired. He sang songs his grandmother had taught him. He recited old poems from memory. He invented games using pieces of thread he pulled from his clothes. When he got bored of games, he started talking to the small surveillance device in the corner of the ceiling. He knew it was there because he had heard it move once. He named it Buddy. "Good morning, Buddy," he said on what he guessed was the second day. "Did you sleep well? I hope so. I had a dream about food. I miss food. Do you eat, Buddy? Probably not. You are a machine. But if you did eat, what would you like? I think you would like rice. Everyone likes rice." The device did not answer, did not expect it to, but talking helped pass the time. On what might have been the third day, the door opened. Light flooded into the cell and covered his eyes with his arm. 2 guards grabbed him and pulled him to his feet. "Time for your session," one of them said. Nodded. "Goodbye, Buddy," he called back to the surveillance device. I will see you later." The guards looked at each other with confused expressions but said nothing. They brought back to the interrogation chamber. Vex was waiting for him. The High Inquisitor studied carefully as the guards strapped him back into the chair. Looked terrible. His clothes were dirty, his face was pale, he had lost weight. But his eyes were clear and calm, he was not shaking, he was not crying, he was not begging. Vex frowned. 3 days in complete darkness, Vex said. Most prisoners are screaming by now. They beg us to turn on the lights. They promise to tell us everything. But you, he tilted his head, you seem almost relaxed. Shrugged, it was quiet, I got some rest. Vex's frown deepened. This was not normal. This was not how prisoners were supposed to behave. Perhaps you need stronger motivation, Vex said. He gestured to one of the technicians standing nearby. The technician wheeled over a small machine with wires and a metal headband. This is a neural probe, Vex explained. It connects to your brain and activates your pain receptors directly. There is no physical damage, but you will feel pain. The worst pain you have ever experienced. Pain beyond imagination. He leaned closer to, "Where did you get the encrypted chip? What information does it contain? Who do you work for?" Sighed, "I already told you, I am a cargo pilot. The chip contains my grandmother's recipes. I encrypted it because those recipes are important to me. That is all." Vex smiled coldly, "We will see." The technician placed the metal headband on his head and connected the wires. Vex pressed a button on the machine. The pain hit like a wave of fire. It felt like every nerve in his body was burning at once. His muscles tensed, his jaw clenched, sweat poured down his face. The pain was incredible, overwhelming, beyond anything he had ever felt. And then something strange happened. Started to laugh. It was not a crazy laugh. It was not the laugh of a broken man. It was a real laugh, mixed with gasps of pain, but a laugh nonetheless. Vex stared at him in shock. The technicians stopped what they were doing. Even the guards looked confused. "Why are you laughing?" Vex demanded. "This should be unbearable. Our instruments show your pain receptors are firing at maximum. You should be screaming." Took a shaky breath. Tears were running down his face from the pain, but he was still smiling. "You call this pain?" he gasped. "Have you ever stepped on a small toy brick barefoot at 3 in the morning on the way to the bathroom?" Vex did not understand. "What is a toy brick?" Laughed again even as the pain continued. "Exactly. You do not know, but trust me, it is worse than this." Vex made a sharp gesture and the technician turned off the machine. The pain stopped. Slumped in the chair, breathing hard but still smiling. The chamber was silent. Vex stood there for a long moment, studying this strange human. His instruments showed that had experienced maximum pain. Biologically, he should have broken. Every other species would have broken. But this human had laughed. "Take him back to his cell," Vex finally said. His voice was quiet, controlled, but there was something new in his yellow eyes, something that might have been doubt. As the guards unstrapped and pulled him to his feet, Vex spoke again. "How," he asked, "how do you endure this?" Paused. He was exhausted, shaking, covered in sweat. But he looked at the High Inquisitor with steady eyes. "Where I come from," said slowly, "we have a saying. What does not kill you makes you stronger. Humans have been hurting for thousands of years. We hurt and we survive. We lose and we continue. You think this is torture?" He shook his head. "This is Tuesday." The guards dragged him away. Vex stood alone in the interrogation chamber, staring at the empty chair. For the first time in 40 years, he was not sure he could break his prisoner. For the first time in 40 years, High Inquisitor Vex felt something he had almost forgotten. He felt afraid. They tried questioning a human. Big mistake. Part 3, Breaking Point, but whose? 1 week passed on the silent truth. Vex tried everything. He used cold. He made cells so cold that ice formed on the walls. The human's breath came out in white clouds and his fingers turned blue, but just curled up in the corner, hugged his knees to his chest and meditated. He controlled his breathing. He slowed his heartbeat. He survived. Then Vex tried heat. He made the cells so hot that the metal walls burned to touch. Sweat poured from his body. He should have collapsed from dehydration. Instead, he took off his shirt, sat in the center of the room and said to the surveillance device, "Free sauna, buddy. Very nice. On Earth, people pay money for this." Vex tried starvation. He gave only a small amount of food every 2 days, barely enough to survive. Most prisoners would panic. They would beg for food. They would trade secrets for a single meal. Rationed his food carefully. He divided each small portion into tiny pieces and ate them slowly throughout the day. He drank water in small sips. He told buddy stories about his grandmother's cooking, describing each dish in perfect detail. The smell of garlic and sesame oil, the sound of vegetables frying in a hot pan, the taste of perfectly cooked rice. She made the best kimchi, told the surveillance device on day 5. The secret was time. Good kimchi needs time to develop flavor. You cannot rush it, like most good things in life. Vex watched the recordings with growing frustration. The human was not breaking. If anything, he seemed more stable than before. How was this possible? On day 8, something unexpected happened. Noticed that one of the guards who brought his food was younger than the others. This guard was smaller, with lighter green scales and eyes that held curiosity instead of cruelty. His name was, and he had only been on the Silent Truth for 3 months. When opened the cell door to deliver food, did something no prisoner had ever done before. He asked a question. "What is your name?" Froze. He was trained to never speak with prisoners. But the question was so unexpected, so simple, that he answered without thinking. Nodded. "That is a good name. How old are you?" I am 22 cycles." 22, you are young, smiled warmly. "Do you have family?" Hesitated. He knew he should leave. He knew he should not talk to the prisoner. But there was something about this human, something different from the scared, broken creatures he had seen in other cells. "I have a mate," said quietly, "and 2 hatchlings. They are back home on our planet." His eyes softened. "What are their names, your hatchlings?" Vin and Tora could not help but smile when he said their names. "They are 3 cycles old, still very small." Vin and Tora repeated. "Beautiful names, you must miss them." Nodded. He felt something strange in his chest. No one on this ship ever asked about his family. No one cared. He was just another guard, but this human, this prisoner they were torturing, had asked. "I miss them every day," admitted. "Tell me about them," said. "What are they like?" Glanced at the door. He knew he was being watched. He knew he would get in trouble for this, but he could not stop himself. "Vin is brave," he said softly. "She is not afraid of anything. She wants to be a pilot when she grows up. Tora is quieter. He likes to draw. He draws pictures of ships and stars." His voice cracked slightly. "I have not seen them in 4 months." Listened, he really listened, and when finished said, "They sound wonderful. You are lucky to have them." Left the cell feeling confused and troubled. He had been taught that humans were weak, soft creatures, easy to break. But this human had not begged or cried. He had asked about children. He had cared. Over the next few days began bringing extra water, just a little, just enough to help. He did not know why he was doing it. He just knew that it felt right. He was not the only one. Learned the names of all the guards who visited his cell. He remembered details about their lives. He asked about their families, their homes, their dreams. He taught them words in Korean. He taught them a simple song that his grandmother used to sing. The guards began to change. They spoke to more gently. They sometimes left his restraints a little loose. They stopped using harsh words. Vex noticed. "What is happening to my crew?" he demanded in a meeting with his officers. "They are becoming soft. They are treating the prisoner like a guest instead of an enemy." One officer spoke carefully. "Sir, the human is unusual. He does not act like other prisoners. He is kind to the guards. He remembers their names. He asks about their lives." "Kind?" Vex's voice was sharp with disbelief. "We are torturing him. How can he be kind?" The officer had no answer. That night Vex went to cell himself. He stood outside the door and watched through the small window. The human was sitting on the floor, talking to Young, who had stopped by with water. "My grandmother always said that food tastes better when you share it," was saying. "Even if you only have a little, sharing makes it more." Nodded slowly. I think I understand." Vex felt something cold in his stomach. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He was the greatest interrogator in the Empire. He had broken thousands of prisoners. But this one human was doing something far more dangerous than resisting. He was winning. Not through strength, not through violence, but through something Vex did not understand, something human. Vex turned away from the door. His hands were shaking. Tomorrow, he decided. Tomorrow he would try something different. He would talk to the human directly, not as an interrogator, as an equal. It was a dangerous idea. But Vex was beginning to realize that everything about humans was dangerous. He just had not understood what kind of danger they posed. They tried questioning a human. Big mistake. Part 4: The Tables Turn. Vex made a decision that went against everything he had learned in 40 years. He ordered the guards to bring not to the interrogation chamber but to his private quarters. No restraints, no torture machines, just 2 chairs and a table between them. When walked into the room, he looked surprised. He was thin and tired. Dark circles hung under his eyes, but he walked steadily and his gaze was clear. "Please," Vex said, gesturing to the empty chair. "Sit." Sat, he looked around the room with curiosity. Vex's quarters were simple but comfortable. There were books on shelves. A window showed the stars outside. On the desk there was a small picture frame, though could not see what it contained. "No torture today?" asked calmly. "No torture," Vex confirmed. He sat down across from. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Finally Vex broke the silence. "I have been doing this work for 40 years. I have broken prisoners from over 100 different species. Warriors, spies, criminals, leaders. Every single one eventually told me what I wanted to know. Every single one broke." He paused. "But you are different. I do not understand you." Tilted his head. "What do you want to understand?" "Everything." Vex leaned forward. "How do you endure pain and laugh? How do you suffer and remain kind? How do you lose everything and still have hope? What are humans made of?" Was quiet for a moment. He looked at the stars through the window, then back at Vex. "Do you know the history of my species?" asked. Vex shook his head. "Only basic information. You are young as a spacefaring species. You come from a small planet. You are physically weak compared to most other races." "Yes," agreed. "All of that is true, but let me tell you what the records do not show." He leaned back in his chair. His voice was soft but steady. "Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. Ice ages froze our ancestors. Diseases wiped out millions. We fought each other in terrible wars. We starved. We suffered. We died in numbers you cannot imagine." Vex listened in silence. "But we did something else too," continued. "During the Ice Ages, when we should have been focused only on survival, we painted pictures on cave walls. We made art. During plagues that killed half our people, we wrote poetry and music. We built temples and monuments that took generations to complete, knowing we would never see them finished." Smiled slightly. "We ran long distances for fun. We climbed mountains just to see what was at the top. We tamed wolves, predators that could tear us apart, and turned them into our friends. We sent messages into space hoping someone would hear us. We sent a car into orbit around our sun for no reason except that it was beautiful. Vex shook his head slowly. That is irrational. Yes, agreed. Completely irrational. But that irrationality is what makes us strong. We do not give up because logic tells us to give up. We keep going because something inside us refuses to stop. We hope even when hope makes no sense. We love even when love brings pain. We laugh at death because it is the only way to not be afraid of it. The room was silent, except for the soft hum of the ship. You asked what humans are made of, said. The answer is stubbornness, madness, and an endless, unreasonable belief that tomorrow might be better than today. Vex sat very still. Something was happening inside him, something he had not felt in decades. The walls he had built around himself, the walls that let him hurt others without feeling, were starting to crack. The chip, Vex said quietly, the encrypted chip we found, what is really on it? Laughed softly. I told you the truth from the beginning. It is my grandmother's recipes, 847 of them, every dish she ever taught me, every meal she ever made for me. His voice grew thick with emotion. She died 3 years ago. Those recipes are all I have left of her. Why encrypt them so heavily? Because they are precious to me, because she was precious to me. Eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. I was a soldier once. I saw friends die. I did things I am not proud of. When I left the military, I was broken, empty. My grandmother saved me. She fed me. She sang to me. She reminded me that there was still good in the world. He looked directly at Vex. Her recipes are not military secrets. They are love, preserved in code so that I would never lose them. Vex was silent for a long time. Then he stood and walked to his desk. He picked up the small picture frame and looked at it. Then he turned it around so could see. It was a picture of a young female and 2 small children. My mate and my children, Vex said quietly. I have not seen them in 12 years. This work, it takes everything. It hollows you out. But I told myself it was necessary. I told myself I was protecting my people. He set the picture down. Now I am not sure what I am protecting. Nodded slowly. We are not so different. You and I, we both have people we love. We both have things we fight for. The only difference is what we choose to do with our pain. Vex looked at him. What do you mean? Pain can make you cruel, said, or it can make you kind. You can pass your suffering to others, or you can use it to understand them. The choice is always ours. The silence stretched between them. Finally, Vex walked to the door and opened it. He called for a technician to bring the encrypted chip. When it arrived, Vex handed it to the technician with new instructions. Decrypt it, he said. Use the full resources of the ship. I want to see what is on it. 3 hours later, the technician returned. His face was pale and confused. Sir, the technician said, we decoded the chip. And it is recipes. 847 recipes for human food. There are also photographs of an elderly human female and 1 audio recording. Vex closed his eyes. Play the recording. The technician pressed a button. An old woman's voice filled the room. She spoke in Korean, gentle and warm, translated in a whisper. Eat well, stay healthy, remember that I love you, and always share your food with others. That is how you make friends. The recording ended. Vex stood motionless. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough. Return the human to his cell, give him proper food, and tell no one about this meeting. The technician bowed and left. Vex sat alone in his quarters for a long time, staring at the picture of his family. He had set out to break a human. Instead, the human had broken something in him. And strangely, painfully, it felt like the first true thing he had felt in 40 years. They tried questioning a human. Big mistake. Part 5, Big Mistake. 6 months later, Vex stood before the High Command. The council chamber was massive. 12 of the most powerful leaders in the Empire sat in a half-circle, their yellow eyes fixed on Vex. Behind them, holographic screens showed maps, data, and military reports. "High Inquisitor Vex," the Supreme Commander said. Her voice echoed through the chamber. "You were given a simple task: extract information from a single human prisoner. Instead, you held him for weeks without results and then released him as a diplomatic gesture. Explain yourself." Vex stood straight. He had spent 40 years serving the Empire. He had never failed a mission. He had never questioned orders, but everything had changed. "I completed my investigation," Vex said calmly. "The prisoner was not a spy. He was a cargo pilot carrying personal items. There was no military intelligence to extract." "That is not what our intelligence suggested," another commander said sharply. "Your intelligence was wrong." A murmur went through the council. No one spoke to the high command this way. The Supreme Commander raised her hand for silence. "We have read your report. We find it troubling. You wrote that humans cannot be broken through conventional means. You recommended that we avoid conflict with humanity. You called them psychologically resilient beyond biological explanation." She leaned forward. "This sounds like failure-born cowardice." Vex did not flinch. "It is the truth." "Truth?" The Supreme Commander made a sound of disgust. "One human. You could not break one human. Perhaps you are getting old, Vex. Perhaps it is time for new leadership." Another commander spoke up. "We have already taken action. In the past 6 months, we have captured 17 more humans. They are being held on various ships throughout the fleet. Real interrogators are handling them now. We will have our answers." Vex felt his blood run cold. "That is a mistake." "You do not give orders here," the Supreme Commander snapped. "The matter is closed. You are dismissed from active duty pending review. Leave the chamber." Vex left, but he knew what was coming. He had tried to warn them. They had not listened. They would learn. The first reports came 2 months later. On the interrogation vessel Dark Promise, 3 human prisoners had organized a resistance, but it was not a violent resistance. They had started talking to the guards, sharing stories, teaching them songs. Within weeks, morale among the crew had collapsed. Guards were questioning the purpose of their work. Several had requested transfers. On the cruiser Iron Silence, a human female named had befriended the ship's doctor. She had asked him about medicine, culture, and history. She had shown genuine interest in his people. The doctor began secretly treating her injuries. Then he started treating the other human prisoners. When the captain discovered this, the doctor refused to stop. He said he had taken an oath to heal, not to hurt. On the battle station Eternal Watch, a human male named had started teaching the guards to cook human food, using only the basic ingredients available in the prison kitchen. The guards gathered during their breaks to eat together and share recipes. The station commander wrote a furious report about discipline breakdown. But the worst was yet to come. 3 officers from 3 different ships requested asylum with the human coalition. They said they could no longer serve an empire that tortured innocent people. They said they had learned things from the human prisoners. Things about kindness, about hope, about what it meant to truly live. The Supreme Commander called an emergency meeting. "This is impossible," she said. Her voice was tight with fury. 17 prisoners, 17 humans, and they are destroying our fleet from the inside, without weapons, without violence. How is this happening? No one had an answer. The humans had not been broken. They had not given up secrets because they had no secrets to give. Instead, they had done what humans always did. They had connected. They had made friends with their enemies. They had found common ground across species. They had reminded the guards that they were not just soldiers. They were fathers and mothers, sons and daughters, beings with hopes and dreams. The prisoners had started a revolution, but it was not a revolution of violence. It was a revolution of the heart. 1 month later, Park stood before the Galactic Council. He wore a simple suit. His hair was neatly combed. He looked healthy now, with color back in his face and strength back in his body. But his eyes still held that quiet calm that had unsettled Vex so many months ago. The ambassador stood across from him. Between them, representatives from dozens of species watched in silence. On behalf of the Empire, the ambassador said stiffly, we offer formal apologies for the unlawful detention and mistreatment of human coalition citizens. We agree to release all prisoners and pay reparations. We request peaceful relations going forward. Nodded, the human coalition accepts your apology. The ambassador hesitated. This was the part he dreaded. May I ask, how? How did your people survive our interrogation? How did they turn our own soldiers against us? Thought for a moment, then he smiled. It was the same smile he had given Vex in the interrogation chamber, calm, warm, unbreakable. We tried to tell you, said simply, humans do not break, we bend, and when we bend together, he looked around the chamber at all the watching faces, we become unbreakable. He turned to leave, then paused. You wanted to know what humans are made of. The answer is each other. We survive because we hold on to each other. We endure because we share our pain and our joy. You cannot break that. You can only join it. He walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the galaxy was silent. 3 weeks later, a small ship arrived at Earth's main orbital station. It carried a single passenger, a young named. He had left his post on the Silent Truth. He had traveled across the galaxy. He carried nothing except a small data chip and a request for asylum. When the human immigration officer asked why he had come, pulled out the chip. This contains 847 recipes, he said. A human taught them to me. He said food tastes better when you share it. He said that is how you make friends. Looked at the officer with hopeful eyes. I want to learn, he said. I want to understand. I want to be part of something that does not break people. His voice cracked. I want to go home to my children someday and tell them there is another way to live. The officer looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Welcome to Earth, she said. Let me show you where the kitchen is. And somewhere, across the stars, an old woman's voice echoed in the hearts of everyone who had heard her message. Eat well, stay healthy, share your food with others. That is how you make friends. That is how you change the universe. One meal at a time.